Hi friend, welcome back to my channel. It has been a couple of months since we did an update on my Pan That palette for this year. It is not a result of not using it, fair warning. It's just a result of finding it difficult to get sufficient time to be able to sit down and film videos. I am on a strict 2-hour feeding schedule right now with my lovely daughter, so it doesn't give me much downtime during the day, but alas, I finally have a window of time and I thought it would be totally fun to give you an update. We're gonna see some nice progress. Before I show you what the palette looks like after 3 months of usage, let me bring you back to what my palette looked like after the first month of usage. Now that you've been caught up to speed, let's go ahead and look at my palette after 3 months of usage. All right, so as you can see, I have clearly been using this palette basically since my daughter was born. I would say I wear makeup on average about 3 days a week. I'm trying to remain relatively active. So like we're enrolled in Mom and Me classes, support classes, things like that to just get me out of the house and interacting with other moms who are going through similar things that I'm going through right now with my 6-week-old daughter. I also will say that I find, similar to when we were doing quarantine back in 2020, that wearing makeup in general just helps me be more productive even if I am not leaving the house. It helps me feel more awake. It helps me feel like more of myself, gives me some of that normalcy, which I do appreciate. So I would say about 3 to 4 days a week I am wearing makeup, as opposed to the 6 to 7 days a week that I was wearing makeup prior to becoming a mother. So because of that, this is the palette that I typically am pulling out and using. When I say typically, I mean this is the only palette that I'm using. Before this whole phase of my life, I was basically treating my Pan That palette as a Monday through Friday project. And that was true all the way up through January and the first couple of weeks of February before I gave birth. And then on the weekends, I would do more playing with other eyeshadow. Right now, I'm really only using this palette, which I think has been really helpful because it has some good go-to looks for me in here. And also it means that I'm making progress. Creatively, it kind of is a bummer that I'm not really touching as much eyeshadow as I normally would on the weekends, but I prefer to make progress on this. I find that more satisfactory. So let's go ahead and talk about the progress that you have seen over the last couple of months that I have accomplished. I'll kind of go first with the go-to shade, no surprise. Center Stage is getting a lot of love. This is always a go-to shade for me. It's the only one I'm using in the palette right now for this purpose, even though I know that Delirium and Celeb probably could be used for a similar purpose. I am only going in with Center Stage all the time. So because of that, this has the most usage. I'm very pleased with this. It is getting a bit more challenging to pick up shadow because I'm just like left with this outer ring, but it's okay. I will work through it. And so until this is gone, I won't touch the other 2 shades that I have that serve the same purpose. So now that we talked about that, let's move on to basically the 3 go-to looks that I have for this palette. The first is my gold look that I go for, and that is with Extravaganza. This, I just like absolutely love this shade. I have a pretty good dip happening in here. I don't think we are near pan at this point, but anytime I'm going for a gold shadow, I'm going with this, which means that then in my crease, I go with Razzle. So these 2 are best friends together. And you can see here, I am getting more of a noticeable dip in this. The mattes, despite the fact that I have pan and another matte on this palette, The mats in here, which I feel like is true of me in general with mats, are harder pressed, harder to get progress on. These mats are a bit more powdery, but I'm still not like flying through them. I don't feel like my brush really digs in to the matte shades in here like they do with some of the more metallic types of shades. The second go-to look is actually what I have on my eyes right now. I have been going for this bronzy type of look with Dazzle on my lid, and then over here with Stardom, that is my crease shade. So I've got, again, a nice little duo here that I'm a big fan of. You can see that I've got noticeable progress happening in here. It looks like that's pan, it's not. It's just the way the shade looks. Again, I feel like I'm a ways away from having pan on here, but surprisingly, I am getting a bigger dip quicker than I am with this shade. And this matte, I feel like you can kind of see that I tend to be in the center, but I'm not getting a ton of progress. Where I will say, which I shouldn't be that surprised, I have the most pan showing is with my third go-to look, which is more of a like purple type of metallic. So Debutante is my clear favorite lid shade. I've always been drawn to this along with the Clubhouse. This is more of a purple pulling brown type of shade. These two together are just a lovely combo. And truthfully, when I was first using this palette prior to the project, those two were the go-to look that I would use. I would use this on my lid and this as my crease. And that was true of like any time I would use this palette. I basically was just pulling those two shades and I loved them. So I made pan pretty aggressively here on Debutante, and then I decided to cool it once I had something pretty noticeable happening and moved into some other looks. I will tell you that this bottom row I haven't really touched in the last 2 months. I just don't feel like, especially Piece of Me, this is a really finicky shade, and quite honestly, I'm trying to be as efficient as possible when putting makeup on because I only have a finite amount of time with which to apply makeup if I'm gonna wear any. So I don't really necessarily have the time to fuss, and this is a fussy shade. It's not easy to work with. It's kind of finicky. You gotta build it and blend it and like put in some effort, which I'm not always looking for effort. Whereas the three go-to looks that I talked about are very seamless. They're easy to blend, easy to get on my face. No big deal there. I also haven't really touched Privy. This one I haven't really looked much into. I will say I feel like this palette does have some redundancy. Like looking at ColourPop's palette choices, I think this could have been pared down a little bit. I'm fine with it. I'm liking it. Truthfully, if I can just use up the shades in my three go-to looks plus my three that I've got here, I'll be very satisfied with the usage of this palette. I do think it's a good palette. So very pleased that I have this much progress despite the fact that I'm not wearing makeup as consistently as I would have if I were working my regular job right now and not with a 6-week-old newborn. Thinking about next month, one, I'd like to film an update in the next month. So that's the first goal. But thinking about usage, I'd like to really push myself and see if I can use up center stage. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to, but I definitely wanna give it a go. I feel like I might be able to, we'll see. I also would really love, let's see here if I can push it. I would really love to get more noticeable dent happening in Extravaganza. I think in general, I'd like to focus more on these two looks and less of these go-to since I already have significant pan happening on the two of those. So I'd like to just go ahead and focus more on those two looks and see what I can do for usage. Maybe try to push myself and try some of the other, bottom shades here that I don't use as much, but again, I'm being very gentle with myself for this project because the fact that I'm even applying makeup feels like a bonus and not a guarantee. So the fact that I have any usage right now is really delightful. And this palette, I think, really aligns with my current situation because it's so easy to use. It's got some go-to stuff to it. So I find this a very practical palette, and tooting my own horn here, I'm real glad I chose it. I think it's working super well for me if I do say so myself. So there you have it. I would love to know your thoughts about my progress down below. I so appreciate you tuning in and watching any of my content these days. I recognize that I'm not posting as much, and many of you have been super gracious about telling me that I can take as much time as I need. I will say I would like to film a bit more because it does give me some normalcy back into my life, and it gives me a creative outlet that I really do enjoy. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll hopefully talk to you in the next video real soon. Bye.